I didn't think I was going to make this video when I first played Astro's Playroom, but when I was thinking about what I was going to do for my now third video, I realized I had fallen into something of a pattern with the last two, and I just didn't want to keep myself in one mode. With the first being an essay on how a remake of Diablo 2 put me into something of an existential crisis, and the second one being a write-up on how Voice of Cards made me feel like Square Enix was wasting Yoko Taro's talent, I noticed that the first two videos had a slightly negative mood to them, even if that wasn't my intention. But then I played Astro's Playroom, and honestly, there really isn't a way for me to be negative about this one. Developed by Team Asobi, Astro's Playroom is the fourth game from the team to feature these little robot dudes, and the second to be named directly after them. All four of these games had been developed as something as a proof of concept for new tech out of Sony. The Playroom was a PS4 game that focused on the DualShock 4 and PlayStation camera, and the Playroom VR was made to demonstrate, well, VR. And Astrobot Rescue Mission was the team's first full game, which brought the platforming genre to the virtual reality peripheral. Most recently, we have Astro's Playroom, which was designed to introduce new PlayStation 5 owners to the console and, more importantly, to the DualSense controller. I've had my PlayStation 5 for a little while now, and even though this game came pre-installed, I never gave it a second glance. I had never played any of Asobi's other games as they all required a peripheral that I just hadn't purchased. I didn't see the need for a PlayStation camera, and VR is going to have to come some ways before I feel comfortable with it. As a quick aside, I have epilepsy, and so the idea of duct taping an OLED screen to my face just doesn't seem like the wisest idea at the moment, especially with the mixed reviews that I've read about the technology. So with those things in mind, I had never been introduced to Sony's newest ambassador, and as a result, I just didn't give a fuck about this pack-in. But between recording the last two videos, I was looking for something low impact to mess around with between projects and eventually settled on Astro's Playroom. And, I've been missing out. Upon booting up this title, you are introduced formally to the DualSense controller. It's a weird concept, almost like giving the new controller a handshake or something, but it is what it is. The game then puts it through its paces with showcasing the new functionalities like the new vibration function, adaptive triggers, touchpad, motion sensor, and microphone. Of these functions, the only two exclusive to the PS5 controller are the adaptive triggers and microphone, with even the microphone having been implemented in things like the DS a long time ago. But even in this little demonstration, you can tell that a lot of love and care has been put into how these functions feel. That is what's going to be the hardest thing to write about and convey about this game, is the feel. Every action utilizes a few different senses all at once to great effect. Just on the adaptive trigger demonstration, not only does each trigger push back with the new haptic force feedback, giving it a believable sense of resistance, but the DualSense also provides vibration that is biased towards the trigger that is actively being squeezed. The final bit of feedback that is present in this demo is the built-in speaker on the controller, as it makes sounds that are biased towards the trigger that is being squeezed. All this comes together in a way that even me, some dude in his 30s that's been playing games my whole life, I was really surprised. I played a few PS5 games at this point, and most of the time I find that the DualSense implementation is just misguided. For example, Control Ultimate Edition has the adaptive trigger set to give the sensation of pulling a trigger while shooting, and while this was a novel sensation, I found that with the sheer amount of shots fired in the game, the functionality did not take long to become uncomfortable and really just annoying. There's been a few other games that I've played that have tried little gimmicks on the controller, but nothing compared to even the first 30 seconds of Astro's Playroom in terms of how natural it felt. After the demos, you flick the titular Astro out of your controller, and you finally get to control this little bastard for a tutorial. The basic kit in this game includes a jump, a double jump / glide attack thing where Astro boosts himself up with lasers. I don't know how that works on a physics level, but it looks cool, and it gives you perfect feedback for where you're going to land. As far as offense, you can punch, you can charge punch, and you can grab certain objects. Astro is not a complicated character to control, but between animation canceling, fluid controls, and the controller constantly providing sensory feedback, I think he might be my favorite platform character that I have ever controlled. Seriously, the PS5 controller is doing some real heavy lifting here. After the tutorial, you're transitioned into a hub area, the CPU plaza, and then the scope of the game becomes apparent. You have the hub area to explore, 4 zones named after different components of the PS5's hardware: memory meadow, SSD speedway, cooling springs, and GPU jungle. There are a few other areas, but I'll get to those a little later. The hub area acts exactly as you would expect. It's a connecting area to all of the levels and activities in the game. but it also functions as a playground to practice your platforming skills. There are coins to collect in the plaza, and following them eventually leads you to the second collectible, the puzzle pieces. They're not quite jiggies, but I wouldn't blame you for getting them confused. There's a lot going on in this little area. Each of the gateways to the 4 main zones are wonderfully animated, and then there's even a centralized tank where you could see the PlayStation 5 CPU represented as an animated character, and a lower level where you can get a better look at it. Between the CPU and the other Astrobots running around the level, there is a real sense of vibrancy that was brought into the game that I truly appreciated. This is nothing compared to something like Spyro 2 or 3's hub worlds with all their secrets, but I enjoyed it all the same. As for the 4 levels, these are classic platform design. Whether it's the crystal cool ocean and pristine beaches of Cooling Springs, or GPU jungles, lush jungles, Memory Meadows, storm clouds, or SSD's evolution into a journey into outer space, none of these areas are breaking entirely new ground, but all of them are visually arresting and interesting to where I was always looking forward to seeing the next one. And then each level also has its own specialized suit for getting through the unique environments that are centered around using the controller in different ways. You have the spring suit that uses the adaptive triggers to emulate coiling a spring, complete with a tightening sound effect and a rumble as you tilt the controller in the direction that you want to let it fly. There is a ball suit that you roll by sliding your thumbs on the touchpad, almost like you're playing Marble Madness or something like that. And it too is accompanied by a vibration that is dependent on the terrain. The spacesuit functions like it did in the opening demo, where each trigger allows you to apply more thrust to the booster, all while tilting the controller to control the trajectory. And then finally, there was my favorite, the monkey suit. This probably got more mileage with me, as I like to climb a lot in my own free time, but I have to give Asobi credit for this proof of concept. Each trigger allows you to grab a handhold, while tilting the controller allows you to reach for the next one with your free hand. And so you quickly get into this rhythm of grab, release, reach, grab, release, reach, grab, and then finally match. It is a lot of fun, and they even added a little tension with time-sensitive holds and holds that crumble, so you have to be careful how much force you apply to the triggers. All of these suits and environments are very simple, but they are all tailored in such a way that they feel fresh and exciting, and they last just long enough to where they never outstay their welcome. And again, so much of this is augmented by the way that the controller feels in your hands. At first I thought I was just easily impressed or something, until I noticed that whenever I was using the spring suit, my cat, who never seems to give a shit about me playing video games, was suddenly hyper aware of what I was holding on to. Whether it be the intense coiling of the spring suit, or gentle vibrations and clinking of a hailstone in Memory Meadow, every level in this game has a new way of immersing the player. And then there's that same vibrancy I mentioned in the hub area that is absolutely littered in throughout these levels. Whether it be wildlife, animals, or other Astrobots engaging in all sorts of activities, there is so much going on visually that I would just kind of hang out in these spaces for a few minutes just exploring. And this game seems to be designed around that. Look closely and you'll find some of the Astrobots acting out references to all sorts of games from the past. Final Fantasy VII, Loco Roco, Horizon Zero Dawn, Killzone, Last of Us, you name it. Asobi made sure that so much of this game was centered around the PlayStation's legacy. Not only are these little references every few feet it would seem, but there's also the third collectible in the form of artifacts. Every level ends with you collecting a fully 3D modeled version of one of Sony's legacy consoles, each with a fun quip appointed to it, but every level also has several more to collect, some of them being as iconic as the PSP to the more esoteric like the PlayStation 2's Buzz controller. All of these are modeled to such a painstaking degree, even representing all the motherboard ports in the back and screw holes. Once collected, all artifacts go to their home in the PlayStation Labo, an area that acts as something of a showroom or a museum for all the consoles and weird peripherals that you've collected. All of them seem to be true to scale, with your character being quite small, and some of them are interactable in some fun ways, like opening the disc tray on the PlayStation 1 or flipping the PlayStation logo on the PS2 Slim. The area starts off pretty empty, but by the end you have more plastic and silicone junk than I would ever know what to do with, and it really made me rethink any notion I had of collecting all these things in real life. The puzzle pieces you collect in levels fill out a mural that gradually shows the PlayStation's timeline, and then the coins that you collect can be used on a vending machine in the back to fill holes in your collection. If I had a slight problem with this game, it would be this sense of fetishization of consumer electronics. Seeing it represented as larger than life did rub me the wrong way. As important as video games have always been in my life, seeing consoles represented as holy relics did make me reconsider how nerdy all this was. But I have to admit, I was a sucker for some of it. This must be how people who actually care about Disney characters feel at their theme parks, but luckily this game came in as a pack-in for a purchase I already made, so maybe that will help me sleep better knowing that I've bought into consumerist propaganda and brand loyalty. I'm kidding mostly, but honestly, I had a lot of fun with this game, way more than I would have ever thought. In some ways, this is a perfect throwback while having all sorts of modern bells and whistles, and its aesthetic and soundtrack just did me in completely. Seriously, the song for GPU Jungle is a Kraftwerk-inspired masterpiece of a video game track. And I suspect they knew it, as you can find stone carvings of the lyrics, and later in the level you can find the GPU itself singing the song aloud. It's good stuff. This is a great pack-in title, and I loved everything about it, even the short length. It took about 4 hours for completion. There's a final level in the game that I purposely didn't cover, as it came as something of a surprise to me, and I don't really feel like spoiling it. And there's even an unlockable speedrun mode to dick around with, but that kind of thing never truly appealed to me. It's there for all of you weirdos who want it, and I'm sure it would be cool to see what they end up making of it. But all told, this just came as a pleasant surprise that I'm glad I gave a shot. I hope that Team Asobi keeps making games, or at the very least, I hope that they can teach other studios how to make the most out of the tech that this console has available. And I hope that Astro continues to be an ambassador for all of Sony's weird peripherals, even if I don't end up buying them. This game was great, and I had a lot of fun. And now I feel the need to go take a shower and wash all this pro-consumer filth off myself. I'll talk to you guys later.